Is it okay to want to be a housewife? I think it's okay to be whatever you want. You want to be a housewife? Go for it. Although you should also think about having a backup plan because things happen, be it a divorce or death, and you don't want to be stuck with nothing for your own sake. You want to be a career woman? You do the damn thing, sister. It's only selfish when someone tries to impose those beliefs onto someone else and call them lesser than because they're different. I hope you find a partner who can help you live the life you want. Yes, but it's important that whomever you're with is okay with that. I want the same as a man. Going to work blows chunks. I would rather be at home with my kids. But do you have a backup if things go wrong in your marriage? How will you sustain yourself? It's totally fine. And being a stay-at-home mom or dad and taking care full-time of a family is anything other than lavish. Just be sure you find someone that shares that same ideas and values, and everything will be fine. Just because this way of life might be seen by a lot of people as not acceptable these days, it's because women were forced into these agreements back in the day. If you do this by your own or because you enjoy it, feel free to do so. It's fine to want to be a house spouse as long as your partner is on board. I intentionally sought out a house husband because I hate homemaking. My husband doesn't work. He stays home and he walks the dogs, cleans, cooks, gets the kids where they need to be, and has time to focus on his art and music in his downtime. We're both very happy with this arrangement, but if I couldn't afford it, it would be problematic, obviously. I'm a housewife. I used to have a career, so I think I have a fair grip on the reality of both options. Being a housewife is absolutely acceptable, but finances are a real thing. You have to live within your means. Being a housewife might mean choosing to go without personal wants if they don't benefit the family. Sometimes if you don't need it to survive, it doesn't exist anymore. That's not to say that you won't find someone who can afford to provide a nice life, but the average person doesn't make enough to sustain a high standard of living, so you do need to be aware of that and adjust your expectations accordingly. Yes, it is okay. Keep in mind the other part. You need to find a husband that's totally on board and be very explicit beforehand. In this very separate arrangement, you might be looking at a partner who does nothing for you or the family except work and provide financially. You need to ask yourself if that's okay with you. Also, you only get limited time as a SOM. Eventually you'll get bored. If you never have a career, what will you do if your marriage relationship breaks down? It is a dangerous position to be in, to be totally financially dependent on someone else. And for that reason I would not recommend it. That doesn't mean women, or men, can't or shouldn't take time off work to look after children. I have nothing against career breaks, or switching to part-time, etc., whilst you have young children. But having no career at all means that you are very vulnerable should you end up in a bad marriage. Also, you may be unfulfilled and bored when your children are older, have left home, and you cannot get a job because you don't have anything like the expected experience for your age. Of course it's okay. It's your life that you need to live, and if SOM is your dream, then chase it. No, it's house husband time. You get 2 jobs, put babies in him. It's your life. Do whatever you want with it as long as you don't hurt someone else. It's definitely okay to be a housewife. And it's not easy at all. My wife is a SOM and she's always doing stuff. I think it's easier over the same span of time. But stay-at-home wives aren't 8-hour shifts, so it balances out. There's definitely a few things you should be okay with before you pursue that path seriously. Some of the stuff I've noticed. You have to be willing to cook most meals. You have to be okay asking your spouse for money to do stuff. You have to be willing to do most house chores like sweeping, mopping, dishes, laundry, etc. He should do some chores. But in my experience, it's normally just the stuff that's really dirty, dangerous, or requires physical strength. You have to be willing to tell your spouse when there's some home maintenance issue or project that needs to get done. My wife had a hard time with that because she hates the feeling of being a burden. I've heard, anecdotally, that it's much harder to find a man who is able to be the sole breadwinner who is not socially conservative. IDK how accurate that is. But it's worth considering. Sometimes I think I'd like to be one too. There's something my mom always says to me, which roughly translates to, don't die for a bar of soap, i.e., don't be so reliant on your spouse that you can't leave if you're not happy. Because you wouldn't even be able to buy yourself some soap if you did. So I think it's important to have a side gig so you are somewhat independent. Life happens. People can switch up on you. Just make sure you can look after yourself if worst comes to worst. I think it's completely fine. As long as you are open and honest about it with any prospective partners and make sure you understand the implicit risks. Be aware that 1. It leaves you vulnerable to abusive partners and unforeseen circumstances. Even a good person can develop severe mental illness, for example, leading to erratic or abusive behaviors. 2. You need to ensure that whoever you date has compatible ideas on finances. That you both plan for eventualities like divorce, illness, or death. Once you have several young children and have been out of your career for 10 years, it makes it very difficult to leave the relationship. Be aware of that. Have a backup plan. It's not a path I'd generally recommend to most people, but there's nothing wrong with wanting that lifestyle. I've had multiple conversations about this, and I think it depends on your definition of Psalm. If you just want to spend your husband's money, that's bad. But if you're interested in providing value to your family in other ways, it can be very valuable if done right. Are you cooking at home and packing lunches to save money on eating out? Are you tracking prices and sales and clipping coupons to save money on groceries? Are you taking up hobbies to reduce expenses, such as gardening and sewing? Does staying at home mean no daycare? Would you be able to do this without a second car, etc.? A psalm can provide a lot of value, and in some cases can make the family more financially stable than working would. I can't count the number of people I've heard who've said daycare costs more than they bring home. Being a psalm can be a tough job, but if you and your husband are on the same page, it can be beneficial for everyone. As others have pointed out, in this day and age you are taking a big risk. Though, if he leaves you, would you be screwed by your lack of experience? There's nothing wrong with it. I was a psalm for 10 years. I loved it and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I abhor working outside of the home. Every day I have to leave I feel like it's another day of my life wasted. If it's financially possible, do it. Of course it is. It's cool to be a housewife. It can happen for you, as long as you marry someone who shares that goal and vision. And communication is key, too. It worked for my wife and me. She worked until we had our first kid, and we decided together that she would stay home to take care of our kids, and I'd work to pay the bills.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.